Let me tell you something about humans. They are absolutely terrible at following rules, but somehow, against all logic, that's what makes them so damn good at saving everyone's scales. My name is Zorn Vex, Senior Diplomatic Liaison for the Galactic Concordant, and I'm still trying to figure out how we didn't all end up as cosmic dust. 3 cycles ago, if you'd told me that a species barely out of their planetary atmosphere would prevent the greatest war in 16 millennia, I would have laughed until my third lung collapsed. And if you'd told me they'd do it by lying, well, I would have had you checked for neural parasites. Ambassador Vex, the human delegation has arrived, announced my assistant, Krill, her bioluminescent spots pulsing with that annoying urgency she always displayed around important events. Wonderful, I grumbled, adjusting my ceremonial collar. Just what we need. More humans with their bizarre idioms and complete disregard for proper protocol. The humans had only joined our galactic community 8 years ago. Most species spend at least a century proving they won't immediately blow themselves up before we even consider diplomatic relations. But humans? They crashed the party early with their primitive warp drives and insufferable optimism. Krill's upper eye ridge twitched. Sir, may I remind you that the Concordant explicitly requested human mediation for the Dravik's hegemony peace talks? I'm well aware, Krill. Their unorthodox methods seem to appeal to both the warmongering Draviks and the equally warmongering hegemony. Though why anyone would trust creatures who still get excited about processed sugar discs is beyond me. You mean cookies, sir? Don't start with their terminology, I huffed. Next you will be saying awesome and no worries like that human intern. The massive doors to our orbital diplomatic station hissed open, and in walked the 3 humans who, though I didn't know it yet, would either save us all or accelerate our demise. First came Ambassador Tara Reeves, a tall female with skin the color of Centaurian sand and hair tightly coiled against her scalp. She strode with the confidence of someone who had navigated complex diplomatic situations before, though by human standards she was barely middle-aged. By our standards, practically an infant. Behind her lumbered Security Chief Max Donovan, a barrel-chested male with facial hair that still confused most species in the Concordant. Why evolve to grow fur only on specific parts of your face? Humans never made sense. Trailing them both was their xenolinguistic specialist, Dr. Liam Patel, who adjusted his visual enhancement device's glasses. They call them with nervous frequency. At least he understood the gravity of our situation, judging by his expression. Ambassador Vex. Reeves extended her hand in that strange human greeting ritual. Thank you for facilitating these talks. We understand how critical they are. I reluctantly pressed my 3-fingered appendage against hers. Indeed, the Dravik's Imperium and the hegemony of 7 have been at each other's throats for generations. Their conflict has destabilized 3 sectors and threatens to engulf many more. We have studied the briefs, said Patel, his eyes darting around our crystalline, our transparent meeting chamber, fascinating cultural differences between the 2 powers. The Draviks value absolute truth above all else, while the hegemony places supreme importance on strength demonstrated through action. I gestured toward the 2 separate waiting areas where each delegation was being kept. And therein lies the problem. The Draviks consider the hegemony deceptive barbarians, while the hegemony views the Draviks as weak theoreticians hiding behind principles. Donovan, the security chief, cracked his knuckles, a disturbing sound like breaking carapaces. So we have got to get 2 groups who fundamentally despise each other to agree not to blow up half the galaxy? Piece of cake. This is not a dessert situation, I hissed. Reeves shot Donovan a look. Figure of speech, ambassador. He means we are confident in our approach. And what approach might that be? I asked, already dreading the answer. We are going to create a common enemy, she said with a smile that showed far too many teeth to be diplomatic. Excuse me? Patel stepped forward. Psychological studies show that opposing groups can quickly form alliances when presented with a greater external threat. We are simply going to give them one. I felt my scales prickling with alarm. You are going to invent a threat, to two of the most powerful military forces in the quadrant? Are you completely deranged? Not invent, Reeves clarified, still with that unsettling smile. Recontextualize. I don't know what that means, and I'm quite certain I don't want to. Donovan chuckled. It means we are going to tell them both that something scarier than their enemy is coming, and they'd better make nice if they want to survive. My dorsal spines flattened in horror. You are suggesting we lie to the Draviks? Their entire society is built on truth. They execute individuals for intentional inaccuracies. This is madness. Not a lie, said Patel, adjusting those ridiculous glass discs again. A strategic presentation of facts. There's always something threatening in a galaxy this size. Before I could formulate a response that didn't involve expletives forbidden in diplomatic settings, the chamber doors opened again, and both delegations entered simultaneously from opposite sides. The Dravik's representatives glided in, their translucent bodies pulsing with the light patterns that constituted their primary communication. Ambassador Thaz Ral, their leader, towered at nearly 3 meters tall, his transparency revealing the complex neural network that made the Draviks infamous for their logical precision. From the other door stomped the Hegemony delegation, led by War Decider Gruul Vosh, her exoskeleton gleaming with the metallic inlays that signified her many victories. Behind her, 4 heavily armed guards clanked with each step, their mandibles clicking in what I recognized as anticipation of potential violence. This will end in disaster, I muttered to Krill. Oh yes, most definitely, she agreed, with the cheerful fatalism common to our species. Ambassador Reeves stepped forward, somehow looking completely unintimidated between these two fearsome delegations. Distinguished representatives, she began, her voice carrying that strange human resonance that somehow commanded attention despite their evolutionary insignificance. We thank you for agreeing to these talks. War Decider Vosh clicked her mandibles dismissively. The Hegemony does not fear diplomatic engagement. We simply prefer more definitive solutions. Thaz Ral's light patterns flickered rapidly. Typical Hegemony preference for destruction over reason. This is why your kind cannot be trusted with advanced technologies. Vosh's exoskeleton flushed dark orange, a warning sign I recognized with dread. Bold words from a species that hides behind force fields rather than facing opponents directly. This was deteriorating faster than even I had anticipated. The humans, however, seemed oddly unfazed. Actually, Reeves interjected smoothly, that's precisely why we requested this specific meeting format. We have intelligence of grave concern to both your civilizations. That got their attention. Both leaders turned to face the human. What intelligence? Demanded Vosh. Speak plainly, pulsed Thaz Ral. Reeves glanced at Patel, who activated a holographic display in the center of the room. A star map appeared, with several systems marked in pulsating red. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures in the Vale Nebula region, Patel explained, his voice taking on a serious tone that even I found compelling. Initially, we believed they were natural phenomena. Donovan stepped forward, his face grim. They weren't. With dramatic timing that could only have been rehearsed, Patel expanded the hologram to show a series of strange, geometric patterns moving through space. What are we looking at? I asked, genuinely confused. The Scourge, said Reeves solemnly. I blinked all 4 of my eyelids in rapid succession. The what? What? Thaz Ral's lights dimmed cautiously. We have no records of such an entity. Few do, said Patel. They don't leave witnesses. War Decider Vosh leaned forward, her combat instincts clearly engaged. Explain. The Scourge is what we call them, based on ancient warnings found in the ruins of the progenitor civilization. Reeves continued, referencing an actual extinct species whose artifacts were occasionally discovered. They appear every 7,000 years to harvest advanced civilizations. I stared at the humans in shock. This was their plan? Inventing an ancient apocalyptic threat? It was so absurd that I nearly laughed out loud until I noticed both the Draviks and Hegemony leaders were fully engaged. These patterns, Thas-Ral pulsed, analyzing the hologram. They indicate coordinated movement across vast distances, non-random, intelligent. Precisely, said Patel, and based on their current trajectory and speed, they will reach the disputed territories between your civilizations within 6 months. Vosh's mandibles clicked rapidly. If this threat is real, why have we not detected it ourselves? Donovan crossed his arms. Because they exist partially in subspace. Only our specialized detection array, developed from progenitor technology, can track them reliably. This was getting out of hand. I stepped forward. Ambassador Reeves, a word? She smiled professionally. Of course. Dr. Patel will continue the briefing. I pulled her aside, lowering my voice. What exactly do you think you are doing? Creating fictional apocalyptic threats isn't standard diplomatic procedure. Reeves maintained her composure. Ambassador Vex, with all due respect, standard diplomatic procedures have failed for 90 years with these two powers. Sometimes you need a new approach. A new approach? You are lying to two species who could obliterate this entire sector if they discover your deception. She looked me directly in the eyes. Are we lying, though? The universe is vast and full of dangers. We have simply prioritized certain information that doesn't exist. Look at them, she said, nodding toward the two delegations who were now both intently studying the holographic data. For the first time, they are focused on the same problem instead of each other. I had to admit, it was remarkable. War Decider Vosh and Ambassador Thas-Ral were standing side by side, their normally hostile postures replaced by shared concern. This is completely unethical, I insisted. More unethical than allowing them to start a war that will kill trillions? Reeves countered. Sometimes the path to peace requires creative solutions. Back at the hologram, Patel was describing the supposed capabilities of this Scourge with disturbing specificity. They consume technology itself, he explained, showing animations of strange geometric shapes absorbing spacecraft. Advanced weapons, energy systems, AI networks all become food for their expansion. How do they breach defensive systems? Demanded Vosh, already thinking like a warrior. They don't need to, said Donovan grimly. They exist partially out of phase with normal space, and conventional shields are useless. Thas-Ral's lights pulsed rapidly. This defies known physics. So did warp drive once, Patel countered smoothly. The universe has many secrets we are still discovering. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. The humans were spinning an increasingly elaborate fiction, and both delegations' representatives of ancient, advanced civilizations were accepting it without question. Have other species encountered this threat? Asked Thas-Ral. Yes, said Reeves, rejoining the discussion. But most didn't survive to document it. We have pieced together information from fragmented records and progenitor warnings. And what is your proposed solution? Asked Vosh, her exoskeleton now a thoughtful blue-green. Combined defense, said Donovan immediately. Neither of your civilizations alone has the resources to counter this threat. But together, coordinating your technologies and strategic capabilities, you might stand a chance. The Draviks do not require hegemony assistance, pulsed Thas-Ral, but with noticeably less conviction than before. Nor do we need transparent ghostlings to defend ourselves, chittered Vosh, though her mandibles had stopped their aggressive clicking. Reeves stepped into the center of the room, her expression serious. With all due respect to both your great civilizations, our simulations suggest otherwise. She nodded to Patel, who displayed a new hologram and elaborate simulation showing first the Draviks' forces being overwhelmed by the fictional Scourge, then the same fate befalling the hegemony. However, Patel continued, switching to a third simulation that showed combined forces successfully repelling the threat, with coordinated defense utilizing Draviks' phasing technology and hegemony quantum weaponry creates a 78% probability of survival. I watched in astonishment as the two leaders studied the simulations with growing concern. They were actually considering it. This ridiculous human fabrication was accomplishing what 90 years of serious diplomatic efforts had failed to achieve. Ambassador Vex called Thaz Raul, his lights pulsing in my direction. Your concordant has extensive historical records. Have you encountered information about this Scourge? All eyes turned to me. The humans watched with barely concealed tension. If I exposed their deception now, any hope of peace would evaporate instantly, possibly along with the human delegation once the Draviks and Hegemony realized they'd been manipulated. But if I supported their fiction, I would be violating every diplomatic principle I'd upheld for over 200 years. The concordant archives, I began slowly, contain many references to extinct civilizations and their downfalls. The progenitors left particularly enigmatic warnings about cycles of extinction, not technically a lie, but certainly not confirming their ridiculous story either. Reeves gave me a slight nod of appreciation before turning back to the delegations. We propose an immediate cessation of hostilities between your civilizations and the formation of a joint defense initiative. Why should we trust the hegemony? Pulsed Thaz Raul. They have violated 17 previous agreements. Because this time we face extinction, growled Vosh. Even a Dravik should understand basic survival. Perhaps, Reeves suggested, we could establish a neutral monitoring system, with concordant and human observers ensuring compliance from both sides? I couldn't believe what was happening. They were actually negotiating. After decades of implacable hostility, these two powers were discussing cooperation, because of a lie. The next 6 hours were a blur of proposals, counterproposals, technical specifications, and territorial compromises. By the time we called a recess, the framework for an actual peace agreement was taking shape. As the two delegations withdrew to their separate chambers to consult with their governments, I cornered the human team. This is unprecedented, I admitted grudgingly. But what happens when they discover there is no Scourge? What happens when 6 months pass and no threat materializes? Donovan grinned. By then they will have invested so much in joint defense systems that backing out would be costlier than maintaining peace. And, added Patel, working together tends to humanize the enemy. Shared projects build relationships. Besides, Reeves said with a slight smile, who says 6 months is the timeline? Data can be reinterpreted. Threats can be reassessed. The Scourge might take longer to arrive than initially calculated. I stared at her in shock. You are planning to maintain this deception indefinitely. Only as long as necessary, she assured me. Peace has to start somewhere, Ambassador. Sometimes it starts with a common enemy, even if that enemy is conceptual. This goes against everything the Concordance stands for, I protested. Truth, transparency, ethical negotiation. And how has that been working out? Asked Donovan bluntly. 90 years, you said. 90 years of failed talks while people died in border skirmishes. I had no good answer. He was right. Decades of principled diplomacy had accomplished nothing, while a few hours of human deception had brought us to the brink of actual peace. There's something else you should know, said Patel quietly, glancing around to ensure we weren't overheard. The energy signatures we showed them, they are real. I blinked in surprise. What? We detected something in the Veil Nebula, he confirmed. We don't know what it is, and we certainly don't know if it's this Scourge we described. But there is unusual activity out there that neither our scientists nor yours can explain. So you built an elaborate fiction around a kernel of truth, I said, beginning to understand their method. It's what humans do best, said Reeves with a shrug. We tell stories. Sometimes those stories help us make sense of the universe. Sometimes they help us survive it. As I watched the human delegation prepare for the next round of talks, I found myself reevaluating everything I thought I knew about diplomacy. These bizarre aliens, barely out of their planetary cradle, had accomplished more in 6 hours than the combined diplomatic chorus of the Concordant had managed in nearly a century. And they'd done it by lying. Or had they? If there really was something strange happening in the Veil Nebula, was it truly a deception? or just a strategic interpretation of limited data. The delegation doors reopened, and both the Dravics and Hegemony representatives returned. To my astonishment, War Decider Vosh approached Ambassador Thaz Ral directly, the first voluntary proximity between leadership of the two species in living memory. "My tacticians have analyzed your phasing shield proposal," she said, her mandibles set in a neutral position. "It has merit." Thaz Ral's lights pulsed in what I recognized as cautious optimism. "Our scientists believe your quantum torpedoes could be modified to disrupt the Scourge's subspace signatures. A working group could be established," suggested Vosh, "on neutral territory. The Concordant would be honored to host such collaboration," I found myself saying, caught up despite my misgivings. As the discussions resumed with new energy, Reeves sidled up beside me. "You see, Ambassador Vex? Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't truth or strength. It's a good story that gives people a reason to work together." I watched as ancient enemies began the tentative process of becoming allies, all because of a threat that probably didn't exist. "I still don't approve of your methods," I told her quietly. "Noted," she replied with that strange human expression, a smile that somehow conveyed both amusement and understanding. "But do you approve of the results?" I looked at the delegations, now huddled together over technical schematics rather than weapon specifications. "The Concordant has always believed that truth is the foundation of lasting peace," I said slowly. "But perhaps we have been defining truth too narrowly." "That," said Ambassador Reeves, "is the most diplomatic way of saying you were right that I have ever heard." Little did I know then that the humans' deception would soon be tested in ways none of us could have imagined. Because as it turned out, there really was something coming from the Veil Nebula. And it was far worse than the fiction they had created. The peace talks continued for 3 more days. 3 days of technical discussions, territorial compromises, and the occasional threat display that had me reaching for emergency evacuation protocols. But somehow, miraculously, we emerged with a preliminary cooperation agreement between the Dravics Imperium and the Hegemony of 7, all built on a human fabrication. "I still can't believe this worked," I muttered to Krill as we watched the signing ceremony from our observation platform. Her bioluminescent spots pulsed with amusement. "You underestimate the power of a common enemy, sir. Nothing brings rivals together like mutual destruction." "Yes, but it's not real," I hissed, keeping my voice low. Krill tilted her head, her third eye focusing on me while the others watched the ceremony. "Isn't it?" Dr. Patel said they detected something unusual. "An energy anomaly is hardly an ancient civilization-devouring monster, perhaps. But the cooperation it has inspired is certainly real. Below us, you, War Decider Vosh, and Ambassador Thaz Ral were applying their respective authentication methods to the document, Vosh pressing her primary claw into a genetic verification pad, while Thaz Ral emitted a specific light sequence that was as unique as any fingerprint. Ambassador Reeves stood nearby, looking far too pleased with herself. When the final authentications were complete, she stepped forward. "This marks a historic day for both your civilizations and the galaxy at large," she said, with that irritating human talent for stating the obvious as if it were profound wisdom. "The joint defense initiative you have established will not only coordinate your response to the Scourge threat, but will open channels for cultural and scientific exchange that benefit everyone." Thaz Ral's lights pulsed in agreement. "The Dravics acknowledge the logic of cooperation when facing extinction. The Hegemony fights best with worthy allies," added Vosh, which from her was practically a love poem. I shook my head in disbelief. "They are going to be furious when they discover they have been manipulated." Krill's spots flashed with what I recognized as skepticism. "Will they, though? The humans have given both sides exactly what they wanted, an honorable way to end a conflict neither could win without losing face." She had a point, not that I would admit it. The Dravics could claim they were acting logically in the face of a greater threat, while the Hegemony could present themselves as powerful defenders against a worthy opponent. It was almost elegant in its deceptive way. The signing ceremony concluded, and the delegates moved to the reception area where food compatible with each species' biology had been arranged. I watched with fascination as Dravik's and Hegemony representatives, who months ago would have gladly annihilated each other, awkwardly attempted something resembling civil conversation. Ambassador Vex called Reeves, gesturing me over. I was just telling War Decider Vosh about the Concordance offer to host the first technical exchange. I forced my faceplates into what I hoped resembled a pleasant expression. Yes, our research station in the Ninixian system has advanced laboratories suitable for joint weapons development. Weapons that may prove useless against a non-existent threat I added through our private communication channel to Reeves. She didn't flinch. Any technological advancement has multiple applications. I'm sure creative minds will find uses for their collaboration. The Hegemony will send our top quantum engineers, declared Vosh. They will require access to Dravik's phasing technology. Thaz Raul, who had drifted over during our conversation, pulsed hesitantly. Such access would normally be restricted to those who have completed the trials of truth. Perhaps, suggested Reeves smoothly, a modified version of these trials could be developed for non-Dravik's participants? A demonstration of commitment rather than biological compatibility. And just like that, she was doing it again, finding creative compromises where traditional diplomacy would have seen only obstacles. The human suggestion has merit, admitted Thaz Raul after a moment of consideration. A trial of shared purpose could be established. I watched in amazement as the two ancient enemies continued negotiating terms that would have been unthinkable days ago. The humans had created a momentum toward peace that was carrying forward under its own power. As the reception continued, Donovan approached me, munching on some protein-based appetizer. Not bad for a bunch of deceptive humans, huh? I still maintain that building peace on falsehood is dangerous, I replied stiffly. He shrugged those massive shoulders. You know what's really dangerous? Letting trillion-year-old civilizations blow each other up over philosophical differences. Sometimes you gotta break the rules to save lives. And when your deception is discovered, cross that bridge when we come to it, he said, using some incomprehensible human idiom. Besides, like Patel said, something weird really is happening out in the Veil. We just enhanced the narrative a bit. Before I could respond, my communication implant buzzed with an urgent message. I excused myself and moved to a private alcove to receive it. Ambassador Vex, came the voice of Fleet Commander Jazz Noor, a high-ranking official in the Concordance Security Division. We require your immediate attention regarding anomalous readings from monitoring stations near the Veil Nebula. My cardiac pump nearly seized. What kind of anomalous readings? Subspace distortions matching the profile shared by the human delegation. We are detecting organized patterns that suggest artificial origin. I steadied myself against the wall. Are you saying there really is something out there? I'm saying our science division cannot explain these readings through any known natural phenomena. Multiple stations confirm the same data. Something is approaching, Ambassador. How long until it reaches inhabited space? At current velocity, 4 to 6 months. Exactly the timeline the humans had presented. My mind reeled with implications. Keep monitoring and send all data to my secure channel, I instructed. And Commander, limit access to this information until we understand what we are dealing with. I ended the communication and stood frozen in place. Had the humans somehow known? Had their creative interpretation of data actually been accurate? Or was this the most improbable coincidence in galactic history? I needed answers. I scanned the reception and spotted Patel in conversation with a Dravik scientist, gesturing animatedly as he explained something. I moved toward them, but before I could reach Patel, the station's emergency alerts activated. Red warning lights bathed the reception hall, and the automated system announced, "Attention all personnel. Unidentified vessels approaching." Defense protocols activated. The peaceful atmosphere evaporated instantly. Hegemony guards moved to protective positions around their delegation, while the Draviks shifted into their defensive phase state, becoming nearly invisible. Ambassador Reeves quickly took control of the situation. Everyone remained calm. This station has state-of-the-art defenses. Security teams, please escort the delegations to their designated safe areas. I hurried to the command center, Reeves and her team following close behind. The station's tactical display showed 3 vessels of unknown configuration approaching rapidly. Magnify, I ordered. The screen zoomed in on the lead vessel, and a collective gasp filled the room. It matched no known design in our extensive databases, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as we watched. "That's impossible," I whispered. Donovan let out a low whistle. "Well, I will be damned. Looks like our made-up boogeyman might have some truth to it." "Those patterns," said Patel, his face pale, "they match the energy signatures we detected. You said you fabricated the Scourge." I accused, my dorsal spines flaring in alarm. Reeves looked as shocked as I felt. "We extrapolated from minimal data." "We never expected," she trailed off, staring at the screen. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. The main screen flickered, and an image appeared that defied easy description. The being resembled a constantly shifting collection of geometric shapes arranged in a vaguely humanoid form. When it spoke, its voice was a modulated series of tones that our translation systems struggled to interpret. "Attention, biological collective. Your technological advancement has been noted and categorized. Let's prepare for integration." A chill ran through me. This couldn't be happening. The humans couldn't possibly have guessed correctly about a threat they invented. "What does integration mean?" demanded Reeves. The entity's form shifted again. "Your technological achievements will be added to our collective. Resistance is inefficient." "And the biological components?" asked Patel cautiously. "The living beings? Irrelevant. Biological substrate will be processed for energy requirements." With that cheerful statement, the transmission ended. "They are powering weapons," called out the tactical officer. "Raise shields and contact both delegations," I ordered. "We need." I never finished the sentence. A beam of coruscating energy lanced from the lead vessel, striking our station with such force that even our advanced shields fluctuated dangerously. "Shield capacity at 68% from a single hit," reported the tactical officer, her voice rising with alarm. "Return fire," I commanded. The station's defensive systems activated, sending pulses of energy toward the unknown vessels. The beams struck true but seemed to be absorbed with no visible effect. "No damage detected," confirmed tactical. "They are firing again." The second blast reduced our shields to 41%. At this rate, we would be defenseless within minutes. Donovan grabbed a communication terminal. "This is Security Chief Donovan to all human personnel. Combat stations, Protocol Omega. This is not a drill." Reeves turned to me. "Ambassador, we need to coordinate with the Dravix and Hegemony delegations immediately." "You want their help after lying to them about this very threat?" I asked incredulously. "We didn't know we were right," she protested. "But right now, that doesn't matter. What matters is that, thanks to our lie, we have 2 powerful civilizations already prepared to work together against exactly this kind of threat." She had a point, infuriating as it was. "Fine," I conceded. "Krill, contact both delegation leaders and have them meet us in the Strategic Command Center. Tell them the Scourge has arrived earlier than projected." The next hour was chaos. 3 more hits further degraded our shields to critical levels before we managed to activate the station's emergency jump drives, relocating us to a position near the Dravix Hegemony border, ironically, the very region they had been fighting over for decades. In the Strategic Command Center, War Decider Vosh and Ambassador Thaz Rao received the news with surprising calm. "The timing is unfortunate," pulsed Thaz Rao, "but not unexpected. Intelligence often includes margin for error." "Indeed," chittered Vosh. "Better to face the enemy now while our forces are mobilized than to be caught unprepared." I exchanged glances with Reeves. The human's expression was unreadable, but I detected a hint of guilt beneath her composed exterior. These two civilizations were preparing to fight a deadly enemy based on what had been a complete fabrication until, through cosmic coincidence or something more disturbing, it had become reality. "We need to coordinate an immediate response," said Reeves. "Those ships will track us here, and they are just the advanced scouts." "How can you be certain?" demanded Vosh. "The human information has proven accurate thus far," pulsed Thaz Rao before Reeves could respond. "Logic suggests we should continue to rely on their intelligence." And just like that, the humans' credibility was reinforced rather than destroyed by the appearance of the very threat they had invented. It was absurd. It was unprecedented. It was working. "The Joint Defense Initiative must be accelerated," declared Vosh. "My fleet can deploy to this position within 6 hours. Dravik's phase shift technology could be adapted to counter their energy absorption capabilities," offered Thaz Rao. "But we require time for implementation." "Time is something we don't have," said Patel grimly, studying the sensor data. "Based on their propulsion signatures, the main force will arrive within 12 hours. "Main force?" I questioned. "How can you possibly know that?" Patel adjusted his visual aids nervously. "Pattern recognition. These 3 ships are moving in a standard reconnaissance formation. Their communication bursts suggest they are reporting back to a larger group. More human extrapolation. But given recent events, I wasn't about to dismiss it." "What do we know about these entities?" asked Thaz Rao, his lights pulsing with scientific curiosity even in this crisis. "Very little," admitted Reeves. "They appear to be technological in nature, possibly a synthetic species or a biological-mechanical hybrid. Their interest seems focused on advanced technology rather than territory or resources." "Technology hunters," growled Vosh, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "We have faced such scavengers before, though never so advanced." "If they absorb technology," I said slowly, "then perhaps the most advanced weapons are not the answer." All eyes turned to me. "What are you suggesting, Ambassador?" asked Reeves. "A technological civilization typically develops in predictable stages," I explained. "What if we presented them with something unexpected? Something that doesn't follow standard development patterns?" Donovan's eyes widened with understanding. "Something like human technology. We took some weird turns in our development compared to most species." "Precisely," I agreed. "Your propulsion systems, for instance, utilize principles most civilizations abandoned as inefficient millennia ago." "Because we were impatient and couldn't figure out the elegant solutions," said Patel with a self-deprecating laugh. "We brute-forced our way into space." War Decider Vosh clicked her mandibles with sudden enthusiasm. "Primitive weaponry. The hegemony maintains a museum of historical armaments. Projectile weapons, chemical explosives, technologies we haven't deployed in combat for generations." "Such approaches would be unexpected," agreed Thaz Rao, his lights pulsing rapidly. "If these entities have evolved to counter advanced energy weapons and shields, they may have no defenses against kinetic projectiles or chemical reactions." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The most advanced civilizations in the quadrant were seriously discussing reverting to primitive technology as a defense strategy. Even more surprisingly, it actually made sense. "We will need a coordinated approach," said Reeves, "a way to combine these older technologies with just enough advanced systems to deliver them effectively." "The Dravik's phase shift technology could allow projectile weapons to bypass their shields entirely," suggested Vosh, turning to Thaz Rao without a trace of their former animosity. "And hegemony quantum targeting could ensure precise delivery," agreed the Dravik's ambassador. As the former enemies enthusiastically planned a joint defense using deliberately obsolete technology, I pulled Reeves aside. "This is madness," I whispered. "We are betting the safety of multiple civilizations on the hope that technological parasites haven't encountered primitive weapons before." She smiled grimly. "Sometimes madness is exactly what you need when facing an unknown threat. Conventional thinking won't work against unconventional enemies." "Is that a human saying?" "It is now," she replied. Over the next 10 hours, a bizarre coalition formed. Dravik scientists worked alongside hegemony engineers to integrate ancient weapons designs with just enough modern technology to make them viable. Human engineers contributed their own peculiar innovations, focusing particularly on what they called analog solutions that wouldn't register as technology to digital sensors. The 3 scout ships arrived just as preparations were being finalized. This time, they brought friends 15 more vessels of various configurations, all bearing the same shifting geometric patterns. "They are hailing us," announced the communications officer. The same unsettling entity appeared on screen. Resistance is noted. Inefficient but predictable. Surrender your technological achievements for peaceful integration. Ambassador Reeves stepped forward. "We'd like to discuss terms of cultural exchange rather than surrender. Surely there's a way for both our civilizations to benefit?" I stared at her. Was she seriously attempting to negotiate with technological parasites? The entity paused, its geometric form shifting more rapidly. "Negotiation is unexpected. Specify proposed exchange parameters. We'd like to invite a delegation aboard to demonstrate some of our unique technological approaches," she continued smoothly. "Things you might find interesting additions to your collective." Another pause. "Proposal accepted. Prepare to receive representatives." The transmission ended. "Are you insane?" I demanded. "You are inviting them aboard?" "Exactly where we want them," said Donovan with a predatory grin. "Away from their ships and surrounded by our surprises." "This is either brilliant or suicidal," muttered Krill, her spots pulsing with anxiety. "Often there's little difference," replied Reeves. The entity's delegation arrived an hour later. 3 of the geometric beings, each slightly different in configuration but equally unsettling. They moved through our corridors with an unnatural fluidity, scanning everything they passed. "Welcome," greeted Reeves as they entered our main conference room. "We have prepared demonstrations of various technologies unique to our civilizations." The lead entity shifted its form. "Proceed with technological display." Donovan stepped forward, holding what appeared to be an ancient human weapon, a simple metal tube with a handle. "This is one of our earlier innovations," he said casually. "We call it a shotgun." Without warning, he aimed it at the nearest entity and fired. The primitive explosive propellant sent dozens of metal fragments tearing through the geometric form, disrupting its pattern. The entity emitted a discordant electronic screech as parts of its structure collapsed. The other 2 entities reacted immediately, their forms shifting toward what appeared to be defensive configurations, but they were too slow. Hegemony guards emerged from hidden positions, firing similarly primitive projectile weapons enhanced with Dravik's phase shift technology that bypassed whatever protective fields the entities generated. The ambush was swift and devastatingly effective. Within moments, all 3 entities lay in disarray on the conference room floor, their geometric patterns fragmented and erratic. Containment teams, move in, ordered Vosh, secure these specimens for analysis. "I can't believe that worked," I said, staring at the disrupted forms. "Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best," said Reeves with evident satisfaction. They were prepared for energy weapons, shields, digital countermeasures, all the things advanced civilizations typically rely on. They weren't prepared for explosives and metal projectiles. "The fleet is still out there," warned Patel, checking a datapad. "And they will know something went wrong when their delegation doesn't report back." "That's phase 2, said Vosh, her mandibles clicking with what I now recognized as anticipation. "While the humans distracted them with this meeting, our combined fleets have moved into position." Thosral's lights pulsed in agreement. "The Draviks contributed phase shift generators to hegemony vessels, while we equipped our ships with hegemony quantum targeting systems. And they are all loaded with what humans used to call dumb bombs," added Donovan with obvious relish. "Nothing smart or technological about them, just explosive compounds and metal casings that will bypass their advanced defenses." The plan worked better than any of us could have anticipated. The combined Dravik's hegemony fleet Using strategy developed jointly by their previously opposed military commands, it launched a devastating attack using deliberately primitive weapons delivered by advanced systems. The entity's vessels, configured to defend against energy weapons and sophisticated technological attacks, had no effective countermeasures against simple kinetic and chemical weapons. Within hours, the invasion force was in retreat, their surviving vessels fleeing back toward the Veil Nebula at maximum speed. In the aftermath, as we assessed the damage and began studying the captured entity fragments, I found myself in the observation lounge with Ambassador Reeves. "I still can't believe it," I admitted. "You fabricated a threat that turned out to be real, then defeated it using deliberately obsolete technology." She gazed out at the stars. "Sometimes the universe has a strange sense of humor." "Or perhaps," suggested Thaz Ral, who had silently phased into visibility nearby, "there was more truth to the humans' information than even they realized." Reeves turned to him with a questioning look. "Our scientists have completed preliminary analysis of the entity fragments," explained the Dravik's ambassador, his lights pulsing in complex patterns. "The technology appears to match descriptions found in ancient progenitor warnings we had previously dismissed as metaphorical rather than literal." "Are you saying the humans were accidentally right about everything?" I asked incredulously. "Not everything," pulsed Thaz Ral, "but enough to make one question the nature of intuition and coincidence." War Decider Vosh joined our conversation, her exoskeleton now bearing new decorative markings commemorating the battle. "The humans have proven themselves worthy allies. Their unorthodox thinking compensates for their technological inadequacies." "Thank you, I think," replied Reeves with a smile. "The Joint Defense Initiative will continue," declared Vosh. "The hegemony recognizes the value of cooperation in facing external threats." "As does the Dravik's Imperium," agreed Thaz Ral. "Logic dictates that diversity of approach strengthens our collective security." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. These two civilizations, locked in bitter conflict for generations, were now committed to ongoing cooperation, all because of a human lie that turned out to be accidentally true. Later, after the delegations had departed to begin implementing their new alliance in earnest, I confronted the human team in their quarters. "Did you know?" I demanded. "Did you have some prior intelligence about these entities that you didn't share?" Patel looked genuinely shocked. "Absolutely not. We detected unusual energy patterns and extrapolated a threat to motivate cooperation. The fact that something real showed up was, statistically, improbable." "Though maybe not as improbable as we thought," mused Reeves. "The universe is vast, Ambassador Vex. Perhaps there are patterns and connections we don't yet understand." "Or perhaps," suggested Donovan with a mischievous expression, "humans are just really good at making stuff up that turns out to be true. Our fiction has a habit of becoming reality eventually." I studied them carefully, still not entirely convinced. "Whatever the case, your methods, unorthodox as they are, have achieved what conventional diplomacy could not. The Concordant owes you a debt of gratitude." "We are just glad it worked out," said Reeves modestly, "though I suspect our diplomatic handbook might need some revision after this mission." "Speaking of revisions," I said, "I have been authorized to offer humanity an accelerated path to full Concordant membership in recognition of your unique contributions to galactic peace." The three humans exchanged surprised glances. "That's quite an honor," said Reeves carefully. "But may I ask what prompted this change of heart?" "The Concordant has been quite clear about the century-long probationary period for new species." I fluttered my dorsal spines in what my species considers a rueful gesture. "Let's just say you have demonstrated that sometimes rules and traditions need to be reconsidered in light of new evidence. Your species thinks differently than ours, and that diversity of perspective may be exactly what the Concordant needs in these changing times." Plus, added Krill, who had entered silently behind me, the Draviks and Hegemony both threatened to withdraw from the Concordant if humans weren't given equal status. They seem quite taken with your peculiar approach to problem-solving. Donovan laughed loudly. "So we are being rewarded for lying to everyone?" "You are being recognized for achieving peace through unconventional means," I corrected, and for being right about a threat none of us took seriously until it was almost too late. As I departed their quarters, leaving the humans to celebrate their unexpected diplomatic triumph, I found myself reflecting on the strange series of events that had unfolded. The humans had lied to create peace, only for their lie to become truth. They had faced a technologically superior enemy and defeated it with deliberately primitive weapons. They had brought ancient enemies together through a fabricated threat that turned out to be real. In the end, perhaps the most significant lesson was not about truth or deception, but about perspective. The humans, with their brief history and limited technological development, saw possibilities that ancient civilizations like the Dravics and Hegemony had long since dismissed. Their very limitations became strengths when facing challenges that required thinking beyond established patterns. As I prepared my final report for the Concordant High Council, I included a recommendation that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier, that human diplomatic methodology, despite its uncomfortable relationship with absolute truth, be studied and selectively implemented throughout concordant diplomatic operations. Because sometimes, just sometimes, a well-crafted fiction can reveal truths that facts alone cannot reach. And sometimes the universe has a strange way of making liars into prophets. Oh, and as for the strange entities from the Veil Nebula, they never returned to our region of space. Perhaps they reported back to whatever collective intelligence controlled them that this sector contained species with unpredictable, irrational approaches to defense. Or perhaps they simply concluded that our technology wasn't worth the trouble of acquiring. Either way, the peace between the Dravics and Hegemony has held firm. Their joint research initiatives have produced innovations neither would have developed alone. Cultural exchanges have begun to heal ancient prejudices, and all because humans, those bizarre, primitive, improbable creatures, told exactly the right lie at exactly the right time. Sometimes I wonder if they knew more than they let on. Other times, I'm convinced they were simply lucky beyond all statistical probability. But most often, I find myself considering a third possibility, that humans possess a kind of intuitive connection to the universe that more logical, established species have lost through millennia of structured thinking. Whatever the truth, and I use that term with new caution these days, one thing is certain. The galaxy is a more interesting place with humans in it, even if their presence requires a substantial recalibration of one's expectations regarding diplomacy, truth, and the proper protocols for first contact with technological parasites. As Ambassador Reeves said to me just before their departure, sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't truth or strength. It's a good story that gives people a reason to work together. I'm still not entirely comfortable with that philosophy, but I can't argue with results.